Hey, my name's Jared Moon, and I'm part of a group of underground athletes you've probably never even heard of before. Most of us don't even have gym memberships. We don't have every piece of equipment known to man, nor do we have a ton of time to train. And we don't need it because we're achieving amazing things without it. We are Garage Gym Athletes, and these are our stories. All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Garage Gym Athlete Podcast. Joe, what's up, man?
Hey, what's up, man? I'm excited to get some new formats, some new talking points going on.
Me too, man. So ever since kind of pressed pause on the Better Humanology podcast and, season 7 of Garage Gym Athlete's been over, my microphone has been cold and lonely. And I've felt just like I don't know what to do with my hands type. Yeah. So what we're doing, guys, we're going to start more regular podcasts here at Garage Gym Athlete in between seasons. We'll still do seasons, but we want to be able to communicate with you guys on a more frequent basis and making sure that you are, informed. Because, it's funny, at Into 3 Fitness, one of the big goals I had early on was helping people reach like autonomy in fitness. And so like teaching them the why behind everything. And so you understand how to do a lot of this stuff for yourself. And that's kind of what I want the Garage Gym Athlete podcast to do, is like start teaching a lot of behind the scenes stuff about programming or different methods or studies or whatever. So people can just be a little more autonomous in their fitness journey. I think that'd be really cool. And people normally call me out on that. And it's like, well, don't you have a service that people pay for? So if they're fully autonomous, they would need to pay for you. And that's true. But I like to look at it as like, do you change your own oil in your car?
No.
Yeah, you pay someone to do it, right? You're fully capable. You could change your own oil, but it's a lot easier just to get someone else to do it who knows what they're doing.
Maybe not me personally, but people are.
yeah, people could do that. All right, guys. So the new format, I'll go over it real quick. Each week, Joe and I are going to sit down. We're going to cover a study. So some study in the strength, conditioning, endurance world, whether it be fitness related, nutrition related, something, we'll cover that, or it could be some sort of method that we're testing or want to talk about. And then we're going to talk about how that can apply to you. So study or method of the week. We'll also talk about a topic of the week. This is a little more off the cuff discussion about any given topic. And then the last part will be the workout of the week, which is typically going to be Meet Yourself Saturday workouts. And we'll talk about those a little bit more, but that's kind of the format we're going for right now. And so this week we have study. We're going to be talking about carbohydrate rinsing and how you could utilize that. Maybe it's good or bad, whatever. We're going to talk about CrossFit and why we don't do CrossFit. Might ruffle some feathers, as I normally do when the words CrossFit or the word CrossFit comes out of my mouth. Someone gets pissed off at me.
Might as well kick things off on a good note, or
right.
A fun note.
Episode 1 here, right? And then we will talk about a new Meet Yourself Saturday workout that's brand new here at Garage Gym Athlete called Stairway to Heaven. So let's kick it off, man, with the study. The specific study, let me just reference it. So it's, if people want to look it up, you could just Google carbohydrate mouth rinsing improves resistance training session performance. And that's DeSimone 2018. I don't know if I said the last name correctly of the person who did the study, but that is the study that we are reviewing and talking about. We're going to kind of reference a lot of other studies in the process inadvertently because this has been studied a lot. But Joe, I'll start with you, man. What's your take just on this in general? So, do you fully understand what carbohydrate mouth rinsing is, and do you understand it enough to explain it to someone else?
Probably not. I understand the concept. I mean, you have sports drinks that you swish in your mouth for 10 seconds, and then I guess some of it gets absorbed, but then you spit the rest out so it doesn't actually go into your stomach. I only have a few takes onto what the reasoning or the how behind it is, but I don't know enough to explain how it's all done.
Well, you nailed it on the head with like how you do it. So you just like swish some Gatorade around in your mouth, or you can make your own solution and you spit it out. And there's been a lot of research on this, specifically in the endurance community. So the book Endure by Alex Hutchinson, right? Yeah. So who we had on the Better Humanology podcast. I learned a lot about it in his chapter on fuel in his book. And so that's where I first heard about it. In the endurance world, this is like, it's just like it's a proven thing. Like, swishing the Gatorade around carbohydrate mouth rinsing is like, it increases endurance performance. It's not really unknown at this point. Where it's a little bit unknown is in strength training. People are undecided on whether or not it can actually help you in your strength. And the study that we just mentioned, overall says that it could be possible to help someone improve strength. It's not like overwhelmingly true, but the initial findings are that, hey, yeah, this could help you to some degree. What's your take on that?
So I was trying to read the abstract on it, and it said that they added 12% more reps.
Yeah, like total volume to the workout. Yeah.
Okay. I didn't see how that actually, like, because they had the sets and reps, but it didn't say like how, at least in the abstract, how if they were going for a max out and they just did more reps the next time or what.
Yeah, I think that's actually what they did. They would
do a set of 10 rep max and then do it again with the rinse, and they did more.
Yeah, so I think they had like a normal set rep scheme, and then they would do 3 times max reps at 10 rep max on 5 compound exercises, on 5 different compound exercises. So basically testing max reps. And so the group who did the carbohydrate mouth rinsing they pumped out a little bit more repetitions than the groups that didn't have carbohydrate rinsing in it.
So I wonder, the first thing I thought of was, if you're rinsing for 10 seconds, you spit it out, you still have it in your mouth and you're still going to swallow your saliva. So what's the difference in rinsing or just taking like a shot versus like a mouthful rinse?
Yeah, and that's a good question. So like, why not just drink it? Is that what you're saying?
Or like drink a tiny bit versus swishing a larger amount.
So this is what's unknown. So I think some of these scientists are pretending like they understand the mechanism, but I don't think that they do fully. And the reason I say that is because of Alex Hutchinson's book and how many different studies he references. They're saying that it goes back to the central governor theory, that your body is going to stop itself from getting hurt, whether that's in strength training or endurance, by throttling you back mentally. Like, you think that you can't do any more repetitions. You think you can't run any faster. And so your mind is going to throttle your muscles' ability to do work. That's the theory. And they're saying that through an unknown mechanism, when a carbohydrate enters the mouth, and they looked at people's brains on MRI and everything, your brain lets up and lets you push a little bit harder. And it's kind of like tricking your brain into saying, hey, fuel is on the way, so go ahead and push a little bit harder, but you spit that out so you don't ever actually consume the fuel. And so the mechanism is basically like brain trickery is what you're doing. And I mean, the main reason, the question that comes up to me is like, why not just drink Gatorade during your workout? Which I also, in my own brain, would be like, well, I don't want Gatorade. Like, I just don't want it. Like, I don't need that much sugar during a workout, like any workout I'm doing, unless it's over 90 minutes. So that's the answer to why not just drink it, because more likely than not, you do not need the Gatorade. Yeah.
So actually, that was another thing that the next thing I thought about was, it's almost like the aspartame effect, like the fake sweetener effect, where your mouth thinks you're getting something sweet, and it tells your brain you're eating something sweet, and your brain then tells your stomach to prepare for sugar, but then whatever it did to prepare for it is just not there.
Right.
That's kind of what
Well, that's exactly how it's working. But what's interesting about just talking about artificial sweeteners in general, Alex Hutchinson talks about in his book, they did a bunch of different studies to see if this was true, if the same would be true if people would have because what you're talking is more like physiological, like digestive and like everything else. And that stuff's been proven, but they're wondering, okay, will people still get a bump in performance if they have a sweetened drink that's sweetened with, aspartame or Splenda or, whatever, but not actual sugar? And all the studies in there, like placebo controlled, all this other stuff, said no. You can't trick your brain into increased performance through a sweetened drink that's not actual glucose, not actual sugar. So I found that very interesting, because I've read the same thing that you're talking about. Like you can, sweet stuff that's not actual sugar can trick your brain into having a lot of the same bad mechanisms that like why you shouldn't have sugar. But for some reason, when you overlay that to performance, it's no longer true.
That's weird. Yeah.
Go ahead. You have something else?
Yeah. So as far as the drinking versus not drinking it, so now that you say the thing about the brain tricking, so I just read the chapter on sports drinks in Good to Go. Mm-hmm. That's the article that somebody brought up in our community about a month or two ago. And one of the things that they studied is, of course, whether the endurance athletes should drink sports drinks or not. And when they did a study on them, they took a guy that would run for like 2 hours without anything and then with sports drinks and whatnot. And what they found was when most high level racers, when they race, at the end of the race, most of them lose like 10% of their body weight because, and they're technically dehydrated, but it's because their core temperature raises and their core temperature finds a new like homeostasis. But when they drink something, that core temperature would lower and their performance would actually get worse.
Very interesting.
So I guess maybe that's also why. So instead of just it could be why that they just do the mouth rinse. So if they drank it, they found, because a lot of them didn't like it because they didn't want anything in their stomach swishing around, but they're still absorbing it, whatever they need through their mouth. Well,
that's so true. Like there's like a perfect mix for endurance athletes of like how much you should consume in a race. Like what's the least amount I can consume and perform at the highest level is kind of what they're looking for, as opposed to just like, let me shove 6 bananas and a power gel and like all this other crap in here. Cause that's not the most effective way to fuel during your workout.
Yeah. So I wonder if the same would be for like strength exercises and stuff, and like lifting with the core temperature thing. Cause I rarely need to drink stuff anymore during workouts. Like sometimes I'll take a sip just to take it, but I don't find like I need to.
Yeah.
Or
and
like when I go for runs, I don't take anything with me.
Well, and that's what, that's kind of like how I want to put in context of like how, like we're talking about this, the study and carbohydrate rinsing, endurance athlete, strength training. Like how could this apply to the garage gym athlete? And one thing that I had was, so when you eat, you store carbohydrates, and they're called glycogen. That's how your body stores them, glycogen. So you have glycogen stores, and that's what your body uses. So if you eat a really big meal before you go to sleep, and then you wake up the next day, the real reason you don't need anything to eat when you train in the morning is because you have plenty of glycogen stores just ready to go. And unless you're eating like really low carbohydrate or keto or something like that. But there was another study where they're talking about like who this helped most. And it said rinsing and spitting sports drinks produce the biggest benefit in the depleted condition, so depleted glycogen, a smaller benefit in people who are fasted, and none at all in the fed condition. And so, putting those three, so it helped a lot with people who just had completely depleted glycogen stores. So the way you would have completely depleted glycogen stores is you just finished a workout, or you have not been eating a lot of carbohydrates. Maybe you just woke up, something like that, or you haven't eaten that much today. Fasted obviously is fasted. And then if you're already fed, then mouth rinsing doesn't seem to help that much at all. And the reason I point that out is because I know a lot of garage gym athletes wake up and train first thing in the morning, and they ask me, what should they eat? Or I can't really eat anything. Like, you don't need to. You have plenty of glycogen in there, but if you're looking kind of for a performance boost without wanting to fill your stomach up with a bunch of crap, try this mouth rinsing technique in the morning. You could have coffee. The studies on caffeine are, really, really long, and all pretty much prove that it's going to increase your performance. But if you just do a little bit of carbohydrate rinsing, like right before you work out, maybe in the middle, it'll probably give you that little extra boost. Because I know when I train in the morning, and I don't know if you're the same, Joe, I always notice a decrease in overall performance. Like I can get the work done, but I'm just not as like on fire as I would say be like that afternoons between 11 and 2. That's typically when I can perform the best. This is something I'm looking to try. Haven't really tried it that much, especially during those early morning workouts.
I still always train fast no matter what time, so I don't know how much a difference. When I've ate, sometimes depending on the workout, it'll like my stomach will be affected. But
so you definitely need to try this. You're training fasted, but much later in the day. Like I don't do that. I still fast, but I typically have a shake now about an hour before I hit my training.
I'm like 14 hours in, just water and black coffee
right.
every day.
You should do it, man. You should try the carbohydrate rinsing because it says it helped fasted. And then anyone hitting up like a 5 a.m. workout, any garage gym athlete, I think it'd be really beneficial as well.
Today might be the perfect day. We got 1,200 meter repeats, and they're not fun. So I might need an extra boost.
Do you have some Gatorade?
No, I just have Fit Aid and Killcliff.
Oh, man. Waste of money to just spit that stuff.
I know, right?
All right, man. Well, that pretty much concludes that. I think the early morning garage gym athlete or those training fasted, definitely something you should try out. It's kind of the strength side is not fully proven in my opinion yet, but the endurance side, it's more than proven. So just take that into account when you guys are getting after workouts and trying to use a method like this. All right. Are you ready for the next topic? Yeah. So we're going to get into this week's topic, which is why we don't do CrossFit. Oh man. So I gotta talk about why this is coming up. I posted on my Instagram account like an idiot. I shouldn't have done it. You know,
it creates good discussion.
I'm pulling it up right now because anytime I mention CrossFit, people get mad. So I wrote an article a long time ago called "CrossFit Will Make You Weaker," and the amount of death threats and hate mail I got for years, for several years after I wrote that article, is very, very controversial. But whatever. So I posted in on my Instagram account, I'm at EO3Fit. And I said, so a CrossFitter pulls 600 pounds on the deadlift and runs a 4.5 hour marathon. Then I said, in 2013, I pulled 540 pounds on the deadlift and ran a sub 4 hour marathon with 0 days of training for the marathon. I said, he's got me by 60 pounds on the deadlift, and I got him by about 45 minutes on the marathon. My only point, I did this all while not doing CrossFit. And then my caption was fitness is fitness. There is no magic in it. And my main point, everyone thought I was like this, taking a huge shot at CrossFit. Maybe it was a slight shot at CrossFit, but I was more saying, hey, this guy's not some amazing athlete because he does CrossFit. Like you can achieve similar results by just training, like solid training that is not CrossFit, because a lot of people out there don't want to do CrossFit or they don't want to pursue CrossFit. So that was my only point. But it opened up a lot. Like you guys can go to my Instagram account and look at all the comments and see what people were saying. And overwhelmingly, a lot of people were just arguing that I do CrossFit and I want to call it my own thing. And I want to talk about that a little bit. But before I do, Joe, you want a little bit more backstory. So the CrossFitter who pulled 600 and ran 4.5 hour marathon, his name's Austin Malleolo. I think I pronounced that correctly. And I had been seeing a lot of that stuff popping up like on my Facebook news feed. And then I started getting emails about it, like because people had known that I did something similar, and people were asking me about CrossFit and its effectiveness for doing stuff like this. And so I finally decided to click on one of those articles. I had already seen it. I had already seen the titles, but I hadn't read any of the articles yet. And I knew that he had ran Boston. And the only thing I knew about Boston was, holy shit, like if that's pretty incredible. This was my first thought, because I was like, I know that you have to run, in the like sub 35 age bracket, you have to run like a 3 hour marathon or faster to qualify for Boston. So when it said he lifted 600 pounds and ran the Boston Marathon, I was like, dude, holy shit, that's really, really freaking impressive. I was like, this guy's got a sub 3 hour marathon and a 600 pound deadlift. And then I go to read the article, and he's got a 4.5 hour marathon, which is the qualifying time for Boston if you're 75 years old, and a 600 pound deadlift. And I'm not negating that that's not impressive. Very impressive still, but it was different than what I thought, and not at the outer spectrum of what I thought was possible. And so I wanted, anyway, just to point out that you can get similar results with just solid training. We ended up having this conversation about CrossFit, whether or not we do CrossFit, and I was going to explain some of that today. But Joe, first I want to get your take on everything.
On the post?
On the performance, on what you think of the overall performance of the deadlift and marathon combo.
I mean, the marathon time is, I think it could be attributed to some CrossFit, but there still has to be a lot of structured strength training to get to 600 pound deadlift. Like you can't just like casually do some Metcons or whatever and get there. the marathon time is probably about for anybody that is in shape and does stuff could probably do if they push
Yeah.
enough.
That's exactly my thought is, so one, you're not doing a Metcon every day and getting a 600-pound deadlift. That's just, I mean, the only person who's like legitimately told me that happened, and I believe him, Patrick Barber, legit CrossFitter, went to the CrossFit Games multiple times. I had him on the podcast a while back, or a long time ago, and he read my CrossFit Will Make You Weaker article, and he's like, I pull 500 and I've never done a strength program ever. And I was like, I've never heard of such a thing. That's really impressive. But I was like, how long did that take you? And it was over a decade. And I was like, yeah, I mean, I could probably take someone who has a 200-pound deadlift and get them to 500 pounds in like a year or 2 years, something, like not a decade. So structured strength is always going to win. And then, like you said, CrossFit's really great for general physical preparedness. And so if you're just prepared physically and like, you can probably do a 4.5 to 5 hour marathon. Just don't die, just keep moving. You could walk some of it, run here and there. And you could get that done at that pace. So I think that's kind of what he accomplished there marathon wise.
So back in 2012, when I was deployed, I was like there for 4 months. I pretty much just did my own random CrossFit workouts. That's what I was getting into because they had a CrossFit tent on base. But I was just looking up random workouts and doing them and doing like 20 to 30 minute Metcons and stuff every other day or something like that. And after 4 months, they had a marathon and half marathon on the base. So I was just like, okay, yeah, I signed up. Like the longest I would ever run during that time span was a 5K. And me and a buddy did it. I signed up like the week before it was, and I did it in like 2:05, which isn't like a awesome time, but it's like, okay, I didn't run. I didn't prepare. I was out of shape before those 4 months. It was just, my body was ready and it was fine, but it wasn't anything to write home about.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And then this conversation led to, okay, you just do CrossFit, but you church it up and call it Garage Gym Athlete or whatever. And that I do take a little bit of offense to. And I have to talk about, because this is, I mean, we don't do CrossFit at Garage Gym Athlete. If you think that CrossFit is a Metcon, like by putting together multiple different exercises and doing it for time or something like that, that's not actually the definition of CrossFit. The definition of CrossFit is constantly varied functional movement performed at high intensity. That is the definition of CrossFit. It's not ambiguous. There's no gray area. There's not some, fitness equals CrossFit and CrossFit equals fitness. No, CrossFit is constantly varied functional movement performed at high intensity. That is CrossFit. It has a definition. They defined it. And the reason that you can't start going into all these other areas is because the second you start programming out strength, or you start periodizing your programming, or you start training to get better at one specific thing, you're not varied anymore. Maybe you're doing functional movement, but maybe you're only doing high intensity once a week or something like that. You're not doing CrossFit anymore. Just by their own definition that they said. They made their own parameters. If you're not in those parameters, you're no longer doing CrossFit. But what a lot of people think or feel, which is not the truth, is that, okay, if you're not doing powerlifting, if you're not running, if you're not cycling, if you're not an Olympic lifter, if you're not a bodybuilder, if you don't fit, if you're not an obstacle course racer, if you don't fit in any of those categories, then what you're doing is CrossFit. And that's not true either. There's a whole nother area called strength and conditioning. It was around before Greg Glassman was alive. Like, this stuff has just been around. And the example I wanted to give was, there's fitness and then there's CrossFit. So fitness versus CrossFit is like comparing water and coffee. So water, almost every drink is water. Every drink has water in it, right? Like, your coffee is technically, like, you could argue to me if you really wanted to that your coffee is just water. It's a form of water, right? But they're completely different drinks. They serve different purposes. They affect your health differently. Everything's different. So CrossFit would be coffee. Like, it is fitness, but it's hit the beans. It's now it's in a different state. It has its own definition. So you can no longer call coffee water. You can make an argument, but it's not the same. Coffee is its own substance, has a different chemical makeup, and everything like that. So it's no longer just water. And that's kind of how I see the comparison between fitness and CrossFit. Yeah, there's a lot of similarities, but the second you start planning things out and doing, you're not constantly varied anymore, it's and not high intensity, then you're not doing CrossFit anymore. You're just not. Like, by definition, you're not doing CrossFit. By definition, we're not doing CrossFit because we're not constantly varied. We're repeating a lot of stuff. We're doing strength programming. We do functional movement. And then we also don't go high intensity every single day. So that's a big marker right there, is that if you're not doing high intensity, you're not doing CrossFit. Like they threw that in there. So like everything else is not CrossFit now by their own definition. All right, man, what do you got? Like anything to follow up on anything I said so far? I also have some other
yeah,
points.
because I made a note about the labels. People are just obsessed with labels. And if they can't fit something into a box, they're going to push it into any box that they can.
Absolutely.
So while CrossFit does has its set term, everybody just makes it under another umbrella. It's like there's a small circle that's CrossFit, but then everybody else has it all in a much bigger circle. Yeah.
And you know what's funny about this is some people are like, well, you just want to call your thing something different because like they think I want to compete with CrossFit from a business perspective. That's the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard. So from a business perspective, like for anyone thinking about starting like online programming as a business, let me give you a real good tip and quick way to succeed faster than we have. Say that you do CrossFit. Say that you do CrossFit. That will give you a huge leg up. CrossFitters love to spend money on online programming. It would be so much easier if we just completely embraced that and we were like, yes, Garage Gym Athlete is the premier, CrossFit programming for garage gyms around the world. We're not. We don't do CrossFit. We're not random. We don't do those things. And so that's why we don't do CrossFit. Now, another reason why I've kind of moved away from just the CrossFit methodology as a whole and a lot of other top coaches and programmers just in the industry is because high intensity training done on a daily basis jacks up your cortisol. Your cortisol jacks up your hormones. And, you can go into further jacking up your cortisol and your hormones. You're going to increase blood sugar levels. You're going to gain weight. You're going to suppress your immune system. You're going to have digestive problems, possible heart disease. All these things come with high intensity or high levels of cortisol, which, yes, your job can give you high levels of cortisol. Your alarm clock in the morning, your high intensity training, your coffee, all these things can do that. But when you're doing that on a repeated basis and you're never recovering, the high intensity model doesn't work anymore. And it's been proven through other studies, like, okay, well, is there any form of exercise that helps regulate cortisol or down-regulate? And yes, low intensity training does that. It will actually lower the cortisol levels in your bloodstream. So constantly varied functional movement performed at low intensity, not CrossFit, but helps you lower that cortisol and be a more balanced athlete. And I think a lot of people are starting to see that you have to be on both ends of the spectrum to have a well-balanced training program that gets you results.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. I mean, I could go on and on for that one. Like, hold on. I did want to post one thing, read a post. So this, someone posted, did you see it yesterday in the Garage Gym Athlete community group? They were like, hey, where should I go for online programming?
Yeah.
Okay. I love that. And this will be a little bit self-serving to Garage Gym Athlete, but hey, it's our podcast. So they're asking, and everyone's chiming in with like all the typical like places you could follow for online programming. And even you were like, hey, look, dude, you might want to narrow that down a bit because you got people are suggesting CrossFit, people are suggesting strength training, some are strength and conditioning, so on and so forth. So like, what are you interested in? And then one of our athletes, Nathan, came in and he said, my wife and I love Shred from Garage Gym Athlete. We've done street parking and RP physique templates. It's by far the best. He's talking about GGA. He said, it's far more comprehensive than street parking, which feels as random as most CrossFit because they're CrossFit. We're not. Said, I could not be a happier customer. We plan to do a round of strength track later this year and then might try H2K next year. And then I was like, thanks, man. You really explained like what we do. And then he had a follow-up. And he said, I have so much more to say. He's like, one of the critical components that Garage Gym Athlete gets right that most other online programming fails to grasp is the value of clearly defined goals supported by testing. Each track has an actual training objective, not just get fit. The programming is tailored toward these specific goals, not in name only. We are focused to test ourselves every 3 months with benchmark workouts to see if we're actually improving. This is huge for us. The other thing is I love that the programming will never discard conditioning like starting strength. Oh, did I mention endless variety? And the only reason I bring that up is because I feel like he has clearly differentiated why we don't do CrossFit, or should I say how we don't do CrossFit, is just our ridiculous amount of planning and programming that we talk about. When I talk about programming, I'm talking about a year and a month and what we're doing. When a CrossFitter talks about programming, they're talking about the different exercises they put together in a workout for the day most of the time. Not like, that's not what I call programming. That's like generating a random workout. Well, anyway, if anyone disagrees, wants to, fight me on the definition of CrossFit or whatever, you can. But Greg Glassman defined it himself, so we don't do CrossFit.
I actually wanted to kind of almost go backwards to the beginning of the post directed toward him. And I don't know, I never read out any of these articles. I don't know if it was like somebody asked him about his success and he just attributed it to CrossFit.
Well, yeah, and that's, he was, and those were some of the emails I was getting. And the primary reason I posted that on Instagram was like people were, he was just stating, in a broad sense, like this is what a CrossFit athlete can do and the CrossFit protocol can do for you. But then if you read the articles further, he talks about him and his coach, like working on like some run training that would help him survive the Boston Marathon and like the programming they did to get the 600-pound deadlift. I'm like, dude, say whatever you want. By definition, you're not doing CrossFit either. And this is where it gets really gray and a lot of people get pissed off. But I just think when you have something that's so clearly defined, it's really easy to say what it is and what it isn't. You can't really argue anymore, So
one of the first things I thought of, and this is just my marketing brain, was, you always see those ads on either Instagram, the Instagram models, and the people who have shredded six packs, and they're like, hey, can you do some of these banded exercises with our band and say, this is what you use? And like attributed it. And I think it was, he's clearly tied into CrossFit and that's just part of his career. So like, yeah, I'm going to say that's how I got there, but marketing.
I mean, there are people like Rich Froning, like, and to be honest, I have no real like big problems with CrossFit. Like that I should just state that. Like, I think from a company standpoint, they're like, I've taken their level 1 SO view. They teach a lot of good information and they're really about movement and they're more about coaching. So this definition probably is little concern to them. And so it's, overall, they've done a lot of good stuff. And, going back to what you're saying with, Austin in a marketing standpoint, like Rich Froning, people accused him of like, hey, you don't really do CrossFit, man. You're doing like structured strength training and like, periodizing all this stuff. And he would always come back and be like, no, I do CrossFit, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, yeah, you know what? I would probably say I do CrossFit too. If I had made millions of dollars and it built my entire life, I would probably be so ingrained and be like, yes, CrossFit, this is CrossFit. Like I am CrossFit. I understand that, but just by definition, you either are or you are not doing CrossFit. And I think CrossFit will always be around as a brand because that's what's here now. And the people who are getting upset with me on Instagram about this kind of stuff, you are CrossFit, like that is CrossFit. CrossFit will always be around. But I think the true methodology at this point of CrossFit is it's not going to stand the test of time. This just high intensity model every single day. I don't know a single coach or programmer who's got at least 15 to 20 years of experience who was heavily into James Fitzgerald is a great example of this from OPEX. So he's like, I would call him like the god of fitness. Like he understands a lot more than me. Like he's a little bit further ahead, and who I normally look to and like to have conversations with about fitness would be that guy. And first CrossFit Games athlete to win, or the first winner. And he is even moving away from the CrossFit high intensity model. And he bit hard on CrossFit like early on, was all about it, and still helps CrossFit athletes. But he still doesn't think, like to this day, he doesn't think that it's the best model for health and longevity. So that is where we're at with CrossFit.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's basically it, man. So literally we don't do CrossFit by definition. And then my last point I had written down was some people were like, well, you're doing Murph, which is a CrossFit workout every Saturday. So that's CrossFit. Congratulations, you're doing CrossFit. Here's my caveat. You really have to pay attention to the definitions of things. If I'm doing the same workout every Saturday with the intent to get better at that workout, even if CrossFit named the workout, I'm no longer doing CrossFit because I'm training for a specific workout and I'm doing it every single week. So I'm not constantly varied anymore. I'm training for a specific workout. It's not CrossFit. So you see how there's a difference in the overall intent on whether or not you're doing CrossFit, your overall training plan, whether or not you're doing CrossFit, and then down to was this CrossFit today? Okay, maybe it's CrossFit today, but is it CrossFit I do the same workout in a week? And the answer would be no. So that's it, guys. That's why we don't do CrossFit. For all of our athletes, you're probably just on board. For anyone on the fence who loves CrossFit, maybe some food for thought for you guys.
Also, looking at actual competitor training, so like on Comp Train, and I've also done Invictus before, they usually have 3 or 4 sections to their daily workouts. One of them is a skill, one of them is a strength, one of them is accessory, and then another one is actual intense conditioning. So only one of the 4 pieces is an actual CrossFit workout that you would see at a CrossFit gym. The other stuff is to help with that.
Yeah, I know. And this is the direction CrossFit is moving. And then people will normally say, yeah, but if you go to this is what they always say, if you go to a good CrossFit gym, they will periodize the strength training and have periodized programming. And I'm like, that's not CrossFit. Like you can say it might be happening at a CrossFit gym, CrossFit box. They might have CrossFit.com in the URL, but all said and done, if you just look at the definition, it's not CrossFit anymore once you start going to that level of detail and planning. Like you were just saying, like a lot of those things aren't even technically CrossFit, but everyone's just learning, because this was like a lot more of a debate. Like if you're new or you don't know a lot about CrossFit, like maybe we're helping you understand, but at the beginnings of CrossFit, it was almost like an argument, like, no, all you have to do is these high intensity Metcons every day, and it is going to make you the most badass human being on the planet. Like that was the actual proposal back in the day when CrossFit was first coming out. And now no one's doing that anymore. Everyone's like, yeah, well, maybe we shouldn't do high intensity every day. Maybe we should structure the strength programming like strength and conditioning athletes have been doing for decades. And maybe we should, periodize the endurance programming like endurance athletes have been doing for decades. It's like, well, aren't you just kind of doing stuff that's already existed and not the model that's been taught or proposed? So I'm a stickler on definitions, I guess.
Yeah. Well, so closing out. It's a good tool. CrossFit's a good tool to mix in, but you need some structure.
Yeah, you do.
You can always go 90% heart rate range.
Well, that's and you just brought this up. So it'll be my last point, then we can move on, is that I do think CrossFit will get you really well conditioned, that GPP we're talking about, and will do really good for you on that end. And it can help you lose weight, sweat, all these other things. But I also think that it's the long way around. So I talked about Patrick Barber at the beginning, like follow me in my programming. I'll get you that deadlift in 18 months. If you just want to go random and see a deadlift like once every other 6 weeks, if you're lucky, and you want to wait 10 years, you can do that too. And I'm all about a long-term approach to fitness, but I think you can just get to these really high levels much faster and then just maintain them, as opposed to this really slow-growing approach. So, all right. Well, let's talk about the workout of the week. I briefed it to Joe before we got started. It's called Stairway to Heaven. So I'm going to do my best to describe it here on the podcast, and we'll give some tips. So it's really 3 parts. You're going to do, let's see. Competitor will be 20 reps, established 18 reps, and recruit 16 reps of box step-ups every minute on the minute with 40-pound vest until you are no longer able to fit those amount of reps in 1 minute. So does that make sense, Joe? Like you would do like 20 reps every minute on the minute, and then if for some reason you did 19 the second minute, you're done. You failed that. Now you either do that to a 20-minute cap. So the way to pass part 1 would be do it for 20 full minutes, and congratulations, you won or succeeded. You didn't die in the first part. And if you did fail or you hit the 20-minute time cap, you then rest 3 minutes. You do the exact same thing again, but you drop 20 pounds out of the vest. So if for some reason you got killed on minute 2 of the first with a 40-pound, you'd rest 3 minutes and then you'd start again, but then with 20 pounds in the vest. And again, that one's 20-minute time cap or until failure, whichever one it is. And then you rest 3 minutes. And then at the end, if you're a competitor, you have a 20-minute time cap to finish 400 box step-ups, no vest. Established would be 300 box step-ups, no vest, and recruit 200 box step-ups, no vest. It's kind of a very multifaceted, one of our more complex ones, but when you see it all written out, which we will have provided, it makes a lot more sense. What are your thoughts?
Ouch, the legs.
How would you strategize this one?
So I think the first most important thing to note is that people are going to wonder is like how high they're stepping up. Unless you're like 6'5", you shouldn't use a box over 20 inches.
Yeah. So 20 inches is going to be the recommendation for the box.
When your leg is on top before you're stepping up, it should be at about 90 degrees, not above or not below 90 degrees, if that makes sense, not higher.
Yeah.
So there's that. So the shorter people, just make sure you're using a low enough box or something like that. I would probably, as I go through, try and switch up kind of which muscles that I'm using. So like a lot of times with the step up, you're going to be pulling yourself up with your hamstring. But I notice a lot of times with a ton of step ups, my calves get sore because you're pushing off of the ground. Mm-hmm. So watch out for the calves as you're doing this, because you might want to keep pushing yourself off, but they're going to fatigue a lot faster than the bigger muscles.
One thing I notice when people do a lot of box step ups in a workout is they favor a leg as well. They'll do like left leg step up first every time. And if you actually do that, you're not really working the other leg as much. You know what I mean? So alternating legs, either if that's on a minute basis or a rep basis, make sure that you're alternating your legs. I've actually seen this. I watched some videos of people doing similar workouts and they were just left leg, left leg, left leg. And I'm like, why are you doing that? So definitely mix that up. And remember that it's EMOM. So I would go out a little bit faster for the first couple minutes when you start with a 40-pound vest. Because if you finish those, let's just say competitor, because that's where I'll do it at. If I finish those 20 reps in 30 seconds, I get to rest for 30 seconds until the next minute, right? That's how EMOM works. So I'm not allowed to even start until the next minute pops up. And so if you can finish them faster, you're going to get more rest. Obviously, that comes at the cost of having to move faster. But it's only 20 minutes. It's basically a 20-minute EMOM each time. And so that is my other tip is try and finish them quickly where you can get that rest. Because if you're finishing at 58 seconds, it's pretty much beep, start again. You're just rolling right into the next one, and you're going to fail if you're that close to the wire, which is fine because then you get to try again with 20 pounds in the vest. And if you fail that's fine because then you get to do 400, 300, or 200 box step-ups.
I think also as far as the alternating legs, switch legs while you're on the box at the top. So it's easier when you step up, just switch legs real quick and go down, because when you're pulling yourself up, you can place your foot there faster than you would be controlling yourself down and then switching and then
so
going
what are you
up.
saying? You're saying, so if I step up with my left,
step up with your left, as you're stepping up with your left, switch your weight to your right and then lower your left leg down.
So left up, left down is what you're saying.
Yeah, left up, left down, and then you're tapped, and then
and then right up, right down. Is that what you would do?
Left up. Well, I'm trying to think now.
I could try to think about it as well. I don't actually know what I would do. To be honest, I'd probably do it in like sets of 10, because what you're saying right now would like make my brain tired during, because like I wouldn't know if I was doing it correctly. And so I'll probably go 10 with just stepping up with my left, stepping down with my right, and then I would switch to 10, stepping up with my right and stepping down with my left, instead of alternating every rep.
Okay. So, because that way you're keeping your weight on the one side the entire time, so that way it's faster. Yeah.
Yeah, because you'll go a little bit faster because you only have one true transition, if you will, in between each 10 reps, right? Like a transition because I feel like if you switch, it takes just a little bit more time. If you do that every single rep, that might not end up costing you anything because we're talking about fractions of a second. But I think it'll be a fun workout. And the only way to get to heaven, so you know how we have the harder to kill 5 miler? That's kind of how I spurred this one, or like programmed it, was like the hard to kill 5 miler. If you don't keep the pacing, you get killed, and you can either try again or you're just dead. And that's the only way to get to heaven, is to do the lunges with 40 pounds for all 20 minutes, rest 3 minutes, do all the lunges with 20 pounds for 20 minutes, and then do all the lunges under the time cap, which is no joke going to be the hardest part of that workout, even if you hit the first 2, because I just did the math on it. Like those are going to be kind of hard to hit in the 20-minute time frame. So that's the only way to like truly complete the workout and make it to heaven. It's like the hard to kill 5 miler or condition me to the grave. Like you're either you finish it or you don't.
Now with the step ups, of course you have to have both feet on top of the box, hips open. But when you step down, only one foot or both feet?
Yeah, both feet down on the ground. Yeah, that's a good point. Easy way for people to
skip some time. I mean, you're still doing the work, but you just.
So you're saying like, so say you stepped up with your left, and then you step down with your left, leave the right up, and then push
if
up.
Anything, you just as you put one leg down, the other one just hovers off the box, and then you tap it back down.
Yeah, so a good point. I'm gonna have to mention that when I do the athlete brief. So yeah, both feet have to come down to the ground, and the reason I'm doing that is because I'm trying to ever so gently destroy your hip flexors, and if you keep that hip flexor engaged at the top, it's going to be just a little bit less range of motion for that hip flexor to do some more movement. So I want to tax it as much as possible. All right. How did you like this new episode format?
Let's see how it goes. I think it's fun.
See what the community says. All right, guys.
Might not, every week might not be as spicy, but
yeah, we'll keep it as close as we can. All right, guys, that was it for this first episode. Let us know how you like the new format. You can, if you're one of our athletes, let us know in the Facebook group, or shoot us a message on Instagram. Joe actually runs the Instagram at Garage Gym Athlete, and I am at
everybody knows
Fit. No, there's a team of like 1,000 people. Right?
Yeah.
And then if you guys are not one of our athletes, you can go to garagegymathlete.com and start a trial. We have a lot of different membership options now. Get started with us if you want to not do CrossFit and get a lot better. We are the place to be. All right, guys.
Thanks for listening to the Garage Gym Athlete podcast. If you want to learn more, go to garagegymathlete.com. You can learn about our training. Let us send you a copy of our book, The Garage Gym Athlete, or you can even get featured on the Garage Gym Athlete podcast. Thanks for listening.